Well, James, what a day.
Quite the day, Mark. Indeed, a day for the kind of TV outtake that we don't often see, but fitted right in. I don't know if you saw the interview earlier, Sky News.
I did.
A guest caught drinking a glass of red wine at the end of a long day's politics.
Yeah, on air, right at the end of the interview, you could just see she picked up her glass of red wine. She needed it. I think she was Ukrainian. I mean, if you are in Ukraine right now, if you have any link to Ukraine or Eastern Europe, I think today was a day where you shuddered. What are your adjectives? What are your two adjectives for the day?
For today, well, I'll go stunning. What about you?
That was gonna be mine. You can have that.
All right. I'll also go Churchillian. We'll explain later.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Churchill later on as well in relation to dress, to what Zelensky chose to wear today. We'll go into that in a bit. I think my word would be excruciating. I can't remember a day like that at the White House before. Anyway, I'm Mark Stone, and you're with us for day 41 of Trump 100.
Yeah, and I'm James Matthews on an unprecedented day in the White House. We've not seen anything like this before.
No, President Zelensky has been and gone from the White House after a diplomatic earthquake in front of the world's media. And now all that's left to ask is, what will the consequences be?
Yeah, Mark, the word historic is often overused. It's been used every day since Trump was inaugurated. But today it fits. I mean, these scenes inside the Oval Office, a meeting of two presidents, critical in so many ways, and yet a meeting in the full media glare that descended into aggressive confrontation, shouting, finger pointing, and ultimately Volodymyr Zelenskyy, president of Ukraine, being kicked out of the White House. A remarkable spectacle. Take us back to mid-morning. You were at the White House mid-morning when Zelenskyy turned up.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it was a day that began like the previous day had begun, because there was the pomp, there was the circumstance, the ceremony on the North Lawn of the White House. The day before it had been for the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. It was the Union flag that was flying alongside the Stars and Stripes with the Guard of Honour. And today it was that flag that we have all become so familiar with over the past 3 years, the flag of Ukraine. And huge anticipation, James, because we know that it was only just over a week ago that Donald Trump, President Trump, had chosen to call Volodymyr Zelenskyy a dictator. And so how would the day pan out? I'll be up front, James. I got it wrong this morning. I called it wrong in one of our early lives. My early lives this morning, I said that I didn't think that there would be any diplomatic fallout. I thought this was the moment to repair a relationship which had clearly gone so very badly wrong. I've been in that live position outside the White House so many times. I've covered so many twists and turns of the last presidency, of the first 40 days of this presidency. I've seen many world leaders and American presidents together for these moments, but nothing quite like this. Unquestionably, James, I think an inflection point at the White House and across the world. And I guess the big question is what happens now? How profound will the consequences be? Can Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Donald Trump, can they make up? That was a question that Zelenskyy was asked a few moments ago on Fox News. We'll bring a bit of that to you later in the recording. But I guess we need to start first, where did it all go wrong? I think from the moment they met, and we were looking at that body language so carefully as Zelenskyy got out of the car, Donald Trump was there at the doors of the West Wing to greet him. On Monday, it had been bromance and hugs with the French president. On Thursday, it was slightly less bromance, but still very warm. Today, not so much, was it? We saw that they picked up on that Trump picked up on what Zelenskyy was wearing.
That's right. Zelenskyy, of course, wears this kind of military garb, has done since his country was invaded. Everybody knows that. He was here 2 years ago, celebrated as a hero, and people recognized that and celebrated the fact. Today, I thought this antagonistic meeting was antagonistic from the off. I mean, what a way to welcome this guy, this hero who is at war, with whom you've arranged a meeting to to save his country. And that was the headline that Donald Trump put on it. And, we'd had Macron and Starmer in the Oval Office. All the talk about soft diplomacy, flatter Trump, give it the full bonhomie. And to be fair, both of them went some distance. We'll talk about that later and the value of that distance. But, they were the support acts. That was fine for them. Zelenskyy, it was different. This is a guy for whom it's everything. It's existential. That's what this meeting was. A meeting with his main financial and military backer, of course. So the stakes, could not have been higher. An inflection point, as you say. He was also meeting, of course, the man who had called him a dictator, who had denigrated him, who had said that Ukraine started the war. So it was never going to be easy.
And at the very beginning, at the door of the West Wing, Trump's words to Zelenskyy, well, actually not to Zelenskyy, but to the media that were there, but about Zelenskyy, about the guy that was right in front of him. He said he's all dressed up. It was kind of it was belittling, I thought. And Trump is a towering figure. Volodymyr Zelenskyy is about my height, not at all. And he was like, he said, look, he's all dressed up. And that was sarcastic, as we later, I think, later became clear. As you say, he was in his fatigues ever since the war started. He hasn't changed out of those. He's not been seen in the suit that he used to wear before the war. And it has become clear over the course of the day. There is some reporting by Barak Ravid, who's an excellent journalist from Axios, who's got great sourcing, and he says that in fact the team at the White House, Trump's team, did advise the Ukrainian side that it might go down well if Volodymyr Zelenskyy was to wear a suit today. He chose not to, but I wonder. We know, and it's become so clear over the course of covering this Trump presidency, but the last one as well, that it's the little things that matter. It seems to Donald Trump, and I wonder, with hindsight, if Zelenskyy had decided, OK, I'll turn up in a suit. I will, for the first time, wear a suit. That might have done two things. It would have made Donald Trump think, oh, OK, interesting. It also potentially would have signalled that Zelenskyy believes that maybe his war, the war that he's fighting, is nearly over because he has decided to move out of the suit. So
Mark, a little thing to Donald Trump, I think symbolically huge to Zelenskyy, that he doesn't wear a suit, that he stays true to the warlike principle.
Yeah, it's true. But, as is becoming so clear, we're in a world where the greatest test of a visiting leader is how they manage Trump and how they choose to manage him. Anyway, let's move on to what happened in the Oval Office. For anyone who was under a rock and didn't see this happen, for the first 15, 20 minutes or so in the Oval Office, it was all going pretty smoothly. Formal, as you might expect. The language, it was stiff, I think, would be the word, but formal. Zelenskyy didn't look as relaxed as Macron. He was on the edge of his seat. He looked a little uncomfortable. Why? Well, because he was about to sign a mineral deal and he hadn't got security guarantees in return. It's becoming clear that he thought over the course of today he might get those, which would have made it easier for him to sign the document he ended up never signing. He also doesn't speak English very well. He's only learnt English over the course of this war. And so that was, I think, a challenge as well. We could see that there were interpreters who ended up not having to do any work, but they were there in case they did. And it looked like it was a bit tense. And then J.D. Vance, who was sitting there as well, the vice president, he seemed to be the catalyst of the implosion when he accused Zelenskyy of not being thankful enough to the United States, which, by the way, is not true. Zelenskyy, at every occasion when he's come here, has thanked the Americans. Although J.D. Vance's point was, but today, President Zelenskyy, why haven't you thanked us today? It was that moment, I think, that it turned the Oval Office into somewhat of a pressure cooker. Have a listen.
He broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what you're
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
So there we go. They're a flavour of what we witnessed today. Just a short flavour. The whole lot went on for, I think it was about 10 minutes of that level. It was pretty full on, eh, James?
It was, yeah. And of course, this was playing out on daytime TV. I mean, this was America's Jeremy Kyle, frankly. The shouting, the participation, the finger pointing, the aggression. I actually genuinely thought it might get physical at one stage, and I don't mean in Emmanuel Macron way. You know,
but you could see at one point Trump actually he did push Zelenskyy back as he tried to say, "You've done enough talking."
Yeah, there was a gentle push. There was a finger pointing, the face. He mimicked him at one point. I mean, he couldn't have tried harder to humiliate Zelenskyy as he sat there, not a native speaker. You know, with what was quite an ugly pile-on. You know that. When Vance was triggered, the corner boy jumped into the ring. You know, he wasn't holding back. And you're talking about a guy, Zelenskyy, who his country's at war. They've lost tens of thousands of people. And he clearly felt compelled to lay out some baseline facts throughout the meeting. He started with pictures. But when Vance stepped in, this is the guy who gave the Munich conference berating European countries, misrepresenting their politics. He started to speak about diplomacy to Zelenskyy, who signed agreements, Minsk 1 and 2, with Putin, and seen them ripped up by Putin. There was gall in J.D. Vance laying that down before him, and that's what Zelenskyy bit on, clarified the diplomatic history, and he was, as he went on, was schooling J.D. Vance in the facts of the matter. Vance, I suspect, felt vulnerable at that, didn't want to get into a debate on actual facts firsthand from the guy who's actually been there. And so we had this point where Vance was triggered. He kind of launched into, this kind of invective. For him, it was a matter of dignity, an argument he couldn't be seen to lose in the Oval Office, and neither, of course, could Trump. Yeah,
but the thing that surprised me about that particular moment with Vance is that Vance said that he didn't want Zelenskyy to litigate, as he said, the background of the war.
Yeah, with all having litigated it himself.
Yeah, with all right, but with all the media there. But the media had been invited by Team Trump, and crucially, whereas under previous presidencies, that free-for-all never happened. They all tried to ask questions, but the leaders would never respond. In this case, it's a free-for-all, and Trump does respond. I think one thing I've been reflecting, you know what it's like in our job. It's so full on through the day. It's only at the end of the day, maybe with that glass of wine, that you stop, you slow down, and you think about what happened. I'm going to say something that some will agree with, some won't. I think Zelenskyy did not play it well today. He was dealt the toughest of hands because of the nature of the way Donald Trump likes to do business. But it's very easy to say this with hindsight, but I think he could have just said nothing. He could have said, you know what, I'm not going to respond to this. I'm not going to take any questions. Mr. President, you're welcome to take questions. I want to do this later. I want to hammer this out, and I want to get the deal that you, Mr. President, want. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it when all these, with respect, all these journalists have gone. There was another weird moment where one of the questions came from a journalist who works for Real America Voice, I think it's called. It's a pro-Trump, outwardly and proudly pro-Trump media outlet. I know the journalist pretty well. Nice guy. He's in the White House a lot, and I got to know him actually quite well during the campaign because he was all the Trump rallies, and he asked this question. Have a listen to this.
And my second question for President Zelenskyy: why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest. Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting the dignity of this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe something like yours. Yes. Maybe something better. I don't know. Yeah. We will see. Maybe something cheaper.
You know, a question about his attire, that from Zelenskyy, from the same journalist who at a previous news conference earlier in the week had the first question. Matters of huge international importance. And the right-wing journalist, his first question to Trump was, can I talk to you about a Harvard poll in which you feature prominently? That's a discussion for another day, that ongoing discussion about access, who gets access, and why it's important the correct questions are asked. But Mark, you know what? You said that you felt Zelenskyy overreached. I think you're right, he did, and look at where we are now. But I don't think he had a choice. I think he went into that room. And I do wonder, you know, there's been a lot of talk here about, was he ambushed? I think there's a lot of things that play into that notion. I think the length of this spray, as they call it in the Oval Office, is one. I mean, why did that last so long? Why did it have to get into that kind of subject matter and that sort of, you know, that antagonistic territory? I think J.D. Vance, he had a ready list of why he didn't like Zelenskyy, talking about how he'd gone to Pennsylvania, supported Democrats prior to the election. Trump started getting into the whole Hunter laptop, you know, that Biden scandal that never was, which of course was behind his impeachment. And I think, I just felt he was boxed into a corner for me, Zelenskyy. And, you know, we've had Starmer and Macron come here and to a degree kiss the ring, and clearly there's a value in that, and they were deemed successful. But you know, I'm not sure their visits have aged well on the back of today, because you had Zelenskyy, for whom this was everything, who presented a more, certainly a robust approach. Many would say the first president, the first senior political figure to stand up in the Oval Office, point to Trump and say the emperor has no clothes. I think, you know, the reality was confronted by him in a way that that was real, that was direct, and will be applauded by many in Ukraine. And, you know, for all the talk about Churchill this week, I think he was more Churchill adjacent than anything we've seen.
Yeah, I guess the problem is that that Trump does hold all the cards, and as we have seen, the realpolitik is always there, and Keir Starmer, you're right. We said it actually. I said it during the Starmer moment of the day before that things are looking great at the moment. They're all patting themselves on the back in Downing Street, but what's it going to be like when Trump plays his next card, and the next card he played today, and that's going to make things very awkward for Keir Starmer. It was striking that of all the European leaders who were quick to send their support to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Keir Starmer took a little while to do it, and I think that was very intentional. I think the Brits now see themselves potentially as a bridge between America and Europe and Ukraine. Clearly, no leader wants to upset Donald Trump. This is the point at which surely they have to stand up and say, hang on, this wasn't the way it should have gone. But Keir Starmer is trying to play a very, very dangerous, delicate game now. Maybe he can see himself somehow as the man who can help repair the relationship between Zelenskyy and Trump, because surely that now needs to happen. But
that transatlantic bridge is creaking, isn't it? And I think the other aspect of today as well, and this would have aggravated Zelenskyy and the Ukrainian audience looking on. This relationship with Putin. Again, Trump spoke about Putin, how he suffered through the Russia hoax with me, and very much showed himself to be leaning towards Russia. I mean, you could hear the roar of the Russian bear in that room, and I think that would have antagonized Zelenskyy. But if you're Starmer and Macron, who've come and soaped it in the Oval Office, you have to ask yourself, we're playing diplomacy, quite rightly, with a traditional ally. But is America a traditional ally any longer? Because America seems to be leaving its recognized allies far behind under Donald Trump, which is a central question.
Yeah, and a really good point. And I think one consequence of today, as things stand at the moment and everything moves so fast, is that actually the Trump administration has isolated America terribly today, because it has united the EU and Europe in condemnation of the way that they see that unfolding in the Oval Office. And I was struck by the statement of the EU foreign policy chief, who effectively said in a statement today that she believes that that the leader of the free world needs a new leader. What a statement! What an extraordinary statement. Yeah. Incidentally, this is the same person who was snubbed by her counterpart, by Marco Rubio, when she came here to Washington. He didn't see her. So things are in really, really bad shape. But the other thing, of course, that happened was that that didn't happen was the press conference and the signing of the deal that Zelenskyy came here to do. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You were in the White House, of course, on the lawn, Mark, broadcasting live. There was this signing ceremony lined up, joint news conference. Just talk to me about all of that and being there, and journalists, I suppose, being kind of running from pillar to post, trying to work out what was going on.
Well, it was this weird situation where you get the lines that are coming out of the Oval Office before you see the pictures, because you're not allowed to broadcast live in there. So when that was happening, I was seeing the quotes that were coming out, and I was like saying to colleagues, this is not looking good. But we haven't seen the body language. It's kind of hard to tell in what context these words were saying. And then it became pretty clear this was disastrous. And I said to my colleague, I'm not sure that this signing ceremony is going to happen. But we were still ushered up towards the East Room. And inside, all the chairs were laid out. There was a table. There were two chairs behind the table, one for Zelenskyy, one for Trump. The pens were there. It was all there, ready for the signing ceremony. And then, on a sixpence, boom, it was off. It didn't happen. And a few moments later, we saw Zelensky's car being pulled up again to the door of the West Wing. And my goodness, I thought, he's going to walk. And it turned out he didn't walk. He was pushed. He was, as we now understand it, he left the Oval Office. He went into a sort of ante-room in the West Wing, which is what is normal when leaders have finished their formal meetings. They'll go to a sort of a waiting room before they get ready to depart. And into that room came, I think, the vice president, but certainly Marco Rubio as well, and basically said to Zelenskyy, the deal's off, it's not happening, and we'd like you to leave. I mean, just imagine that.
And you know what? I've been looking at my email feed, and of course, we've all been getting from the office of the president these effusive statements of support, haven't we, for Donald Trump? Secretary of State Marco Rubio, thank you, POTUS, for standing up for America in a way that no president has ever had the courage to do before. Senator Lindsey Graham, and so it goes on. And of course, we've had Zelenskyy tweeting his thanks to many people who've contributed to the debate, presidents from around the world. As you say, this is a guy who has thanked America at every opportunity that he has ever had. We've seen Trump since the meeting. He's off to Florida, but he did stop, didn't he, to speak to journalists before he got onto the helicopter.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelenskyy, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up as strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week, soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians. And somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody. And we're not doing that. Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and then he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting.
And with that, he was off onto Marine One and down to Mar-a-Lago, down to West Palm Beach, where he will spend the weekend. James, I overheard a couple of random conversations just outside the White House, which I think reflect the different views of Americans. Outside the White House, there was a small group of Ukrainians with flags who were supporters of Ukraine, there to see the president, there to tell America why it needs to continue to support Ukraine. And as I was waiting for my taxi, I heard an American walk past, and she just looked at the Ukrainians and she just said, "I'm so sorry." And it was actually a really poignant moment. And the Ukrainian replied, "Oh, don't worry, it's okay." And I was like, "Wow, that was a moment." And then a few moments later, I heard two other Americans who had such a completely different view. They thought that President Trump had stood up to an Eastern European leader from a faraway war who was ripping off America, and they said, wasn't President Trump great there? Like, he's America first. That is what it's all about. That is what it's all about. That's kind of it summed up. Such divisions across America about what to do and whether supporting Ukraine is a fight worth having or not. It was almost as if we were, and I suppose this is what the Trump presidency is all about. We're kind of looking in on what could just be a business negotiation in any other scenario, but it's live, it's happening in real time, two sides. They fall out. In business negotiations, there will be moments of high drama where one side, in a performative way, says, "I'm not doing this, I'm out of here," and walks out. That's kind of what was happening. But except it's real. It's geopolitics, and it's existential for Ukraine. It's remarkable.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. The business negotiation. But you see, the thing about business is, and if you're experienced in business, I think, I'm a journalist, what do I know? But you deal with other business people. There's an understanding. You say, give me $1,000 or you're getting nothing. Now, if they're experienced and they've done it before and there's a predictability about the way that business is done, they'll know that when you ask for 1,000, you're actually talking about 750. Yeah. But if you come fresh to a new deal, a new game, if you're a real estate guy who's coming fresh to geopolitics, then you don't necessarily talk the language. You don't necessarily have the experience that is built up over years. I know diplomats who talk about dealing with the Russians, and they talk about just spending time, chatting, just getting to know them, so that you can read their face, you can read their language, and you know the full extent of what that means, how far you can go. Remember Trump when he was in power first time, you had the Chinese using back channels to say, look, this guy sounds dangerous, what do you think? The military at that time said, look, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it, first-time president. These checks and balances, these safeguards, they don't exist now. And that's the problem. In this business negotiation, who knows where it takes us? And you're not just talking about money, you're talking about world peace. And that is, clearly that's the difficulty that gets more difficult with every passing day. So go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, anyway, so what happened then after that is that Zelenskyy left. He left the White House. He went, we're not quite sure where, but I imagine to regroup with his ambassador to the United States, a woman who I've got to know quite well, who was in the room, in the Oval Office. There is an image, if there is one image to sum up the day, it is probably her. She was spotted at one stage just putting her head in her hands like this. And I mean, what was going through her head? This is a woman who just a couple of years ago at a State of the Union address under President Joe Biden got the standing ovation. Because she has been at the heart of this process, this relationship, this friendship between America and Ukraine. Now, I imagine tonight she is feeling broken. But from there, Volodymyr Zelenskyy went to the Fox News studios, where he went to talk to Bret Baier, the host on Fox News. Have a listen to some of that.
Do you agree with that President Trump is too close to Vladimir Putin in your mind?
We spoke about it, and I think today, very openly, President Trump, he said that I want to be in the middle, otherwise I will not put these guys at the table.
And is he right?
I want to be very honest, I want really him to be more at our side.
Well, there you go, Zelenskyy not quite apologising to Donald Trump. In terms of a solution, Mark, we've heard from Lindsey Graham, Senator, who has Trump's ear. He's also pro-Ukraine. Tonight he's been talking in terms of a solution about Zelenskyy stepping down. He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change. It's one suggestion, which I think will land better in the United States than it does in Ukraine. I think Ukrainians will say, hang on a minute, we'll decide who runs our country and what's best for our country, not Donald Trump. All eyes, of course, now are on the weekend, the meeting in London chaired by the UK Prime Minister, yeah?
A meeting that has such a different feel now, because I mean, imagine in another world whether if this day had gone very well, the deal had been signed, the very vague contours of a peace plan, at least from an American-Ukrainian perspective, would have been there. It then would have been the focus on how Russia would respond to that. But into the middle of that would come this key summit brokered by Keir Starmer. It's still going ahead. Volodymyr Zelensky's flying to London, where I imagine he will be welcomed with open arms by every European nation. But they will be as bewildered as he surely was about the way that today has panned out. And I guess the question now is well, multiple questions. Can the relationship, the personal relationship between Trump and Zelenskyy, can that be repaired? What does this mean more broadly for the American-Ukrainian relationship? How does it impact European leaders who, as we know and as we've talked about through this podcast, are so reluctant to criticize Donald Trump because he is apparently all-powerful and he holds so many cards, whether it be tariffs or anything else, that he could just slap on all of these countries. How on earth do they deal with it? Incredibly difficult indeed.
Yeah, and I think, Trump's comments going to Florida, Mark, where he spoke about how, in his view, Zelenskyy was emboldened and that this was a president, this was a guy who wanted to fight. He said, well, Trump was all about peace.
I thought that was really interesting. I mean, again, with in a parallel universe, if Zelenskyy had thought of using those three words to help his argument with Trump, it might have gone down really well. He could have said, "Look, Mr. President, when you were shot, you got up and said, fight, fight, fight." Well, that's exactly what I am trying to do for my country now. Anyway, our producers are saying, "Wind this up. We've been chatting away for way too long."
All right, well, I tell you, the final point would be, when did Zelenskyy ever say he wanted to continue fighting? He wants peace. He wants peace on his terms.
But he also wants he also has been fighting for his country's survival.
Are we done?
Yeah, no, we are. I think we're nearly there. That is it for day 41 of Trump 100. If you are new to this, if you just flicked on the television, didn't realize this existed, Trump 100 every single day. We're following the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. Please do follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode.
Yeah, and we love hearing from you, our listeners and viewers. So please do email myself, Mark, or Martha Kellner, who's currently on holiday, on Trump100@sky.uk with your questions. We'll do our very best to answer as many as we can in tomorrow's Q&A episode. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, but for now, it's time for us to sign off on a momentous day in Washington, whatever could be next. Thank you for listening to day 41 of Trump 100. We will see you tomorrow for day 42.
Bye for now.